Are you a corporate escapee and wasting valuable time attempting to figure challenges out on your own? Well, this podcast is for you. We bring you firsthand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day.
We get real with no corporate BS. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Hello and welcome to Corporate Escapees, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of people who are successfully running their own businesses, hearing their war stories and motivations for making the jump from their corporate gig. I'm your host, Paul Higgins, and our guest today is someone who spent time in the Navy as a journalist, but he knew he was a poor employee. So he left and had 6 spectacular business failures. But then he hit gold in business 7 and business 8, and he shares some amazing lessons through his journey. And also, if you want to know how to engage influencers, then this is a show you must listen to. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Josh Elledge from UpMyInfluence. Welcome, Josh Elledge, to the Corporate Escapee podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. So we're going to get to know lots about you today, Josh, but why don't we start with something that your family or friends would know about you that we wouldn't?
I actually have an irrational fear of umbrellas. And that is actually no joke. If you walk with me on a sidewalk on a rainy day, I will typically walk with my hands relatively near to my face as to protect my eyes. I just it is absolutely. I'm not joking. Like I'm just fearful that those little pokey things on the outside are coming straight for my corneas.
Was it an incident, Josh, or was it?
I think there was when I was really young. That's the only thing. I don't remember it, but as far as I can remember, I'm very considerate of it.
Very funny. And where are you living at the moment?
I am in Orlando, Florida, home of Disney World.
Well, I'm assuming you don't get a lot of rain there. Is that right? Other than hurricanes or cyclones?
No, we get plenty of rain here. And when it's not raining, it is 95% humidity. It's kind of like, we're in close to the tropics.
Oh, fantastic. Well, look, I know you've had a fantastic corporate career. I know you started in the Navy, etc. Why don't you just give us a quick snapshot of that career, and then later on we'll go into what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I went straight out of high school into the U.S. Navy. I served as a U.S. Navy journalist for 3 years. I was stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and then I spent 1 year out in the Aleutian Islands off of Alaska. And I was actually a morning DJ. That was my job in the Navy. And I wasn't very good. I was pretty bad, to be honest with you. But it was quite a great experience. I went to school for family therapy, but I ended up getting distracted with the whole internet.com boom, and I became an internet developer. And so I did that for a number of years in corporate America. And eventually I was not a very good employee. And, even though it was a great job, fine pay, good working conditions, I just felt like I just needed to do my own thing. I was always afraid I was going to get fired, probably because I wasn't a very good employee. And, when I went out on my own, I started a number of businesses, kind of just worked as a contractor, as an independent contractor, as an internet developer, learned a lot about marketing, wasn't particularly good. I actually failed in business 6 times. Some I exited fairly gracefully, but a couple times I failed rather spectacularly. And but on that 7th venture, I ended up creating a 7-figure a year company, and that was Savings Angel, which I launched 11 years ago. Subsequently, I launched another company 5 years ago just because I had had so much success in working with the media that I was doing so much pro bono work helping other business owners kind of replicate that success that I had with the media, that I just started getting bombarded with requests for help because to date, I've been in the media over 2,000 times. And I'd been doing so much pro bono work in my local marketplace that turned into consulting. And then now we've developed an agency, a global agency that's actually going through a lot of growth right now. So it's kind of fun.
Brilliant. That's a great journey. And we'll go to the agency in a moment, but just back to some of those failures. I think it was, most people say, success is only on the near side of failure. What are some of the key learnings you took out of those 6 attempts?
Yeah, well, I can tell you very specifically that one of my most spectacular failures that led to a personal bankruptcy and foreclosure was I had started a small town newspaper and a blog before there were such things as blogs. And it just, the blog side was a little bit ahead of its time. The newspaper was absolutely a very dated business plan. I don't recommend anyone start a newspaper these days. So I was just not in a good position. But I'll tell you that the reason I failed is because that I was afraid of sales, and I did everything in my power to avoid meeting with potential advertisers and selling them on advertising. And that's a problem when you own a newspaper. You kind of need to have advertisers to support that. Otherwise, it's not going to work out really well. So I would do everything in my power to try and hire other people to do that work because I was just afraid of rejection. I was afraid that people were going to think I was inauthentic. And it ended up being very painful. So I went from that. In fact, my next business was nothing but sales and marketing. And I really put myself into a position where I took the thing that I struggled with the most and I made it the centerpiece of all my work. And because of that, I spent 5 years in sales and marketing, and I ended up getting very, very good at it. Because I was able to relax and realize that sales has nothing to do with convincing people to buy something, but in fact, it has everything to do with bringing value to people and finding ways to serve people and find ways to collaborate, find ways to bring value to the world. And when I made that shift, everything just became so much easier. And not that I haven't had challenges, but I don't have that fear anymore. And I actually get really excited now about meeting with new people and finding if there's a way that I can bring them value.
And, through all of those journeys with your own businesses, who are sort of the people that helped you along the way? And in particular with your sales and marketing, was there anyone in particular that helped you with that?
And that is that one thing that I think I was really smart in doing is I found the most successful person I could in that sales organization, and I shadowed them and I offered to help them with everything and anything that I could. I happen to know how to develop internet websites. And so at the time I said, his name was Tony, and I said, Tony, I will develop websites for you. Like, here's everything that I know how to do. Put me to work. I will do everything in my power to help you. And that was actually really, really smart because as I did that, he helped me a lot. And it was kind of like, I remembered back in high school, and I remember my grandpa giving me a piece of advice. And he said, make friends with the biggest kid in school. And that kid in my school, Plainville High School, was Ken Bronkema. And he was he was humongous. And I made friends with him. And sure enough, anytime that I had a bully issue, I would just let Ken know. Ken would go and stomp on him. And so I think that that's kind of what I did with the sales and marketing is I just found the most successful person I could. I did his homework basically for him. And as a result, we had a friendship, and I ended up doing very, very well with that company over that course of 5 years.
Well, look, the next section's the build section. And with UpMyInfluence, when people say, hey, Josh, what do you do? How do you explain that?
So I turn thoughtful entrepreneurs into media celebrities. And in doing so, I help them create more influence, authority, and ultimately far more revenue.
Right. And I'm assuming most people say, well, how do you do that, Josh?
So having been in the media over 2,000 times, Paul, I've learned a couple things. And at the beginning, I was really terrible at it. But it was one of those things that I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I was good at this? I'm not saying I'm really, really good at it, but I've learned a lot. And so mainly having to do with how to network my way into being able to work with influencers, being able to work with media, being able to get on some very, very large stages. I've had the opportunity to speak at social media marketing world a few times. I've been a keynote speaker. I was invited by the Tony Robbins organization to speak to his business mastery audience. And, all of those were incremental improvements and incremental effort, and you just show up over and over and over again, and that's how I continued to rise. But at the beginning, when I launched Savings Angel, Paul, I was actually in a position where my back was against the wall. I had no choice. I had no money for advertising. And the only thing I could think of was maybe I could talk to these publishers of ad magazines and news magazines and TV stations and radio stations. And I just reached out to them and I said, hey, I don't have any money, but maybe I could provide some value in a different way. And I don't need to get paid. I don't need any promotion. Just please let me be of service. And that was my approach. And it ended up working out very, very well. Started doing local radio segment. Then I started being able to do major market radio. Started writing a small town newspaper column, which then turned into a syndicated newspaper column. Started doing local TV. That turned into syndicated TV. Now TV alone, I've been on over 800 times as a consumer advocate. And so that has really helped Savings Angel because, in the $7 million or so that we've done in revenue, Paul, I think that the thing that most people find pretty shocking is we've spent less than $500 in advertising. We just don't advertise. We don't need to. I've heard someone say that advertising is the tax you pay for being unremarkable. And I don't know that I'm remarkable, but I feel like I just keep on showing up and serving and trying to inspire people to, maybe it's save money if I'm working with Savings Angel. Maybe it's how they can improve their authority and their influence through UpMyInfluence. And, people can tell when there's a level of authenticity. And, people can tell when you're just trying to sell and when you really, truly care about bringing value.
And what are some of the things you see people going about it the wrong way, trying to get PR?
Yeah. So in fact, when I speak about this and I play a bit of a trick on the audience and I say, okay, so for the next 10 minutes, I want you guys to go and do PR stuff. Go do some public relations. On your mark, get set, go. And then I let them squirm and sweat a little bit and struggle. And I say, okay, I'm not going to make you do that after about 10 seconds. I said, but let me ask you, what were you going to do? And almost invariably, like someone will raise their hand and say, I would just start emailing reporters or start messaging influencers. And I would tell them that normally that is actually one of the worst things you could do because your tendency is to want to sell and you want to go for the jugular and you want to just get your product or service in front of audiences. And that's actually pretty inappropriate. That's not the job of an influencer, and that's not the job of a journalist, certainly, to promote your product or service. It is their job to inspire, enlighten, educate, inform. And so similarly, if you want to build a good relationship with an influencer, that should be your philosophy as well. So take your marketing hat, set it on the shelf for a little bit, and just relax and just go to work. And the more people you serve, the more value you bring, you will get everything you want in business. I promise you.
Look, some great advice. And you said before, thoughtful entrepreneurs. Again, describe your sort of ideal client.
So we believe that every person has a message that can positively impact the world. So very specifically, when we are working with clients, and if we ask them, what is your why? Why are you doing this? What is the impact that you want to make? If I hear, hey man, we just want to make money, it's it's not, it becomes a lot less fun, Paul. And I find that there's a lot of, and I'm not saying there's anything, I love making money. I mean, I love helping people make money. I love that. But money is only going to sustain you for so long. And when you get the money, then what? And so it's backwards to say, when I get the money, then I will make a positive impact in the world. That's not how it works. You have to start with the philosophy of, I'm going to make a positive impact in the world, whatever it takes. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a splash. And when you have that philosophy and when you lead with why, that's Simon Sinek, what is the reason? Why are you doing? What is your purpose? What are your core values? And when you have those in place, Paul, it's amazing. I mean, we tripled our business in a matter of months when we shifted to becoming more why focused, as opposed to we just have a transactional relationship with our audience, and you give me money, I give you this. And so similarly, we really like to find that out from our potential clients before we engage with them.
Great. And what's the next 3 years hold for UpMyInfluence?
Wow, like 3 years is like so much time. And in 3 years time, listen, Paul, I have to do what I do right now. There are business owners that are going out of business because they are not getting the traction. They are not getting the visibility. They are not getting exposure, and exposure is everything. And because they are not getting that, they're having to give up on their dreams. They're having to go back to their job in corporate America. And I need to help them. I know that that's why I'm on the earth. So in terms of my impact in the world, I know that we are facilitating a lot of good, and we are helping people serve. We are helping people make more of an impact, a positive economic impact on the lives of people, and helping them truly bring value with their products and services. So in terms of total impact, it's, that's one where I don't know that there's a metric on that, but I do know that there's an emotional impact on it. And that emotional impact is impacting the lives, the cumulative lives of millions of people, because of how we are able to amplify the message of those who we serve.
And look, I know your energy is absolutely contagious. I love it. But what else is, there's lots of PR agencies out there, or people in PR. What's unique about UpMyInfluence? That someone listening right now, it says, just got to get on the phone to Josh.
I cannot tell you, if you want me to get on my, you think I haven't been on my soapbox yet, get me start ranting about how broken the public relations industry is. It's an industry that's relying on this model that is no longer relevant. It's relying on this model of, you pay me $5,000 and I'll introduce you to this influencer or this journalist over here. Now, there are other good things that PR people do, but unfortunately, I think too much of it is relied on this gatekeeper philosophy, which is absolutely insane. And the reason why is because every influencer is now available. I don't know if you heard, but we have a thing called social media. The public relations industry, a lot of PR people are very good at what they do. They're awesome. They're great people, but the friendliest people you'll ever meet. But this old model of, hey, if you want to meet Susie over at WKRP, you got to pay me some money and I'll make that introduction. Now, you don't need to do that anymore. All you need to do is focus on being the kind of business owner or executive who can bring value to Susie and her audience. It's not that hard. Now, we'll help you do the right stuff in order to do that. But and we can do that at a fraction of the cost of what normal public relations would like to charge you. So we typically charge about 1/3 to 1/8 what a normal PR firm charges. And we also, Paul, we don't do contracts. All of our services are a la carte. They're month to month. And so we've completely de-risked everything. And that's why we're growing so fast, is because we have served an audience that the PR industry has largely kind of held their nose or turned their nose up, in terms of like, well, we don't want to serve small, medium-sized business owners because they're always complaining about price and they don't like our contracts. What would happen if you actually went into the blue ocean and provided that small business owner what they're asking for? And Paul, that's what we've done. So we have services that they might just be like a couple of $100 a month, and we can help them move forward. And as they have more success, then they can layer on other services whenever they feel that it's appropriate for them. And as a result, we've been able to grow with some amazing clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's brilliant advice. And for you specifically, for your agency, what are some of the key things that you do to drive new clients? I'm assuming it's PR, but I'll leave it as an open question.
It's interesting. We've actually kind of stepped away from the term PR. And I think what we look at is more influencer engagement for the purpose of increasing authority, because authority is a currency. So we're an authority currency platform, or authority delivery platform. So when clients come to us, they say, you know what? We're starting to do okay in business, but I don't feel like I'm getting the respect that I'd like. I feel like I'm still having to wrestle with clients. They don't respect me. I'm not getting invitations to speak at conferences. I feel like we're still paying way too much in terms of like our cost per lead. I feel like we're just not growing at the rate that we should. And the number one reason I believe, Paul, that companies are not growing at the rate that they wish they could is because they don't have enough authority. And so we believe that authority can actually be easily earned. And it comes from two places: social proof and associations. Social proof is just like, you just build your social media audience, you build your engagement, you give a lot of value to people and people like you. Associations are, you just have to be seen associating with other people who have social proof and who other people respect. So the fact that I got to speak with Tony Robbins, for example, I'm going to mention that because those who know who Tony Robbins is say, okay, well, if the Tony Robbins organization invited Josh to speak, he must be an okay guy. So those are the kind of opportunities that we help facilitate for our clients. And when they do, they make more money.
Great. And what about some of the biggest challenges that you face at UpMyInfluence at the moment?
The biggest challenge, I'll tell you exactly what it is, and that is it's a discovery. Even though we're growing, and we've been consistently growing by, I'd say, a good 40% per year, I believe we could grow at 400%. And so one thing that we have actually done is we've actually we've acquired funding. And we did that because we believe it's time to double down. And I don't think that it was appropriate to do it in the first year or two, but I absolutely believe that now is the time. So I have historically managed a lot of the sales and marketing for our company. And because I haven't built a big enough team, I think that has kept us from scaling at the rate we can. I absolutely believe that we will be an 8-figure company within, I'd say, the next 3 to 4 years. And so, and it's only because I haven't made those scary, risky investments. It's scary to invest in services. I absolutely acknowledge that, when we're chatting with clients, for some that maybe are a little bit newer in business, it feels a little risky and scary to invest in somebody that is going to help them grow their business because you don't know if it's going to work or not. But The problem is you won't know until you do the thing. And so that's why we try to make it as risk-free as possible by working month to month. We don't do long-term contracts. And so, that's one thing we've learned, Paul, is that where we've been a little bit conservative in our investments, there is a cost to that. You just have to make investments if you want to grow.
Brilliant. Well, look, just before we go into the next section, which is the live section, I'd just like to mention our BLG tips for corporate escapees, just like Josh. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Build, Live, Give. So just go to Build, Live, Give in YouTube, and you can see some brilliant tips there. And please subscribe. And if you love the content, please share. So next section, Josh, as I said, is the live section. So tell us a little bit about your daily habits that help you be so energetic.
Coffee, lots of coffee. No, I wake up at 6, and I have learned, Paul, that you have to front load your activity that is going to get you to your long-term goals. So for me, it helps that one of my sons needs to be up at 6 a.m. So I wake up with him, I get him ready out the door, and then I'll usually have a devotional. I'm doing personal development. I'm just taking time for myself. I'm trying to do, things like maybe it's meditating, maybe it's affirmations, taking the dog around the block, and, just kind of going through those things. Like that absolutely sets the pace for the entire day. Whereas, and I can tell you the opposite, and I've had this happen from time to time where, maybe something happened the night before, I end up sleeping in late, and then I'm waking up 30 minutes before my first appointment. Those days are almost always, I just don't feel like I'm in the groove. I feel out of sorts. And so I have to begin the day with intention. A really good book, I'm sure you're familiar with it, what is it? The 5 a.m. Miracle? It's, what is that?
Yeah, is that by, I'll put it in the show notes, but it's.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. Go to the show notes and get that book. Yeah. The Morning Miracle. That's it. Yeah. And that will really help you kind of figure out, exactly. It's just living your life with intention. Yeah. Hal Elrod wrote, it's The Miracle Morning. Get that book, read it if you haven't read it already. You don't have to wake up at 5 a.m., but you should wake up with enough time so that you can begin your day with intention.
Great. And Jenny, who's your wife of, I believe, 23 years after 14, you're married after 14 days of meeting her. What would you say, or what are you going to say to Jenny? So Jenny's listening right now. What are you saying to Jenny about the support she's given you through this journey?
See, the wife of an entrepreneur, the husband, the spouse, the partner of an entrepreneur, it is a very, very special calling because it's one where you witness the ups and downs and you experience the ups and downs yourself. However, it's so important to maintain that support. And Jenny has, and it's been very challenging. I mean, we've been through multiple financial difficulties over the years. But then again, we've also had 6-figure months. And so, that's kind of the life. And, so I'm so honored. And you know what? There are, there are partners, spouses, that they're not really designed well for it. And so I just, if you are a partner or a spouse of someone who is living the entrepreneurial lifestyle, I just want to let you know, please hang in there. Your partner, your spouse may not succeed this time around. They may not succeed for a few years, but if you support them and you work together and you problem solve together and you work as, their go-to person, to someone that they can confide in, and you come up with answers to big challenges together. I promise you that the journey is going to be the most rewarding aspect. It's going to be more rewarding than the money itself. It's great to have some extra money. I'm not going to lie. However, it's the experience of climbing that mountain together, and then being able to look back and say, you know what? We did it together. It is so rewarding. It's so worth it. And I promise you that as long as you keep doing the thing, you keep on showing up, you keep on learning from smart people, you listen to this podcast, you're going to listen to a lot of smart people. And you might listen to what I'm saying, and you might say, yeah, okay, I believe that at an intellectual level. But you have to understand that the people that Paul is interviewing, when you go from head level belief to heart level belief, and just know that if there were a faster way, a more efficient way, a more effective way for you to be able to build success, I would be telling you that. Okay? But I'm telling you the truth. And so when you believe me on a heart level, that is when things really start to open up, and you learn from other people's experiences and their pain, and you shortcut those pains and those hard knocks. You'll find that you really can start to accelerate in business.
Excellent. Well, look, the next section's the give section. And what's a cause or a community that you're really passionate about, and why?
Yeah. Every year globally, billions of dollars in food gets wasted. Now, some of it is systemic, and I don't know that as consumers we don't have direct impact, but we can work together to be considerate of ending food waste, because I think it's insanity to me. Because while we're throwing away billions of dollars of perfectly good food, I'm not talking about the food that's spoiled. I'm talking about perfectly good food. Okay, when your food, I'll speak specifically for the US, I can't speak for a lot of other places in the world, but in the United States, we have this food dating system, and we'll have expiration dates on food. I am here to tell you, I'm going to make a little impact right here. Those expiration dates, according to the USDA, have absolutely no bearing on the food safety. So you can have food that and you could have a box of cereal, and it says that it expired like a year ago. That does not mean that the food is unsafe. It's perfectly fine. And I want you to go to a website. It's called Still Tasty, and you are going to learn a lot about not having to throw away food. Produce. You need to monitor the food, your produce, much better so that you're not throwing away your produce. Learn to use your freezer. Learn to preserve things in jars. Trust me, I'm a busy dude, and if I can do it, you can do it. Get to know the US. We've got Ziploc bags, and use your freezer. Don't stop throwing away food. Now, if you have products in your home, and you see that you're not going to be able to use it, and you feel comfortable that food is going to go bad before a certain amount of time, I want you to develop a friendship with a local charity, a local food pantry, and I want you to just bring like 3 to 5 items over there. For us, it's a local women's shelter, and I want you to get to know them. And once a month, maybe twice a month, I want you to just bring a couple bags over there. Just go through your pantry. What are we not using? And bring it on over. And just make it a habit. And if everybody, Paul, did just a little bit in their communities, I was at a taping of the Oprah show with my wife, and Bono from U2 was performing with Alicia Keys. And I'll never forget, there was a moment when he was talking about ending poverty. And he said, we will get to a point at some point in the future where we will look at how we ended poverty, and we'll look around and we'll say, how did we let that go on so long when it's actually a very easy problem to solve? How do you do it? Everybody just does a little bit. And you could instantly end hunger and lack in our local communities. It doesn't take that much work. It just takes everybody just doing a little bit. Once or twice a month, you bring what you don't need to your favorite local church, pantry, food bank, whatever, local charity, and just develop a relationship. And you're going to feel so good for giving.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Josh. So the last section is the action section. So I'm just going to ask you some questions and just get some rapid fire responses. So the first one is, what are your top 3 productivity tips?
Yeah. So in terms of like communication platform, as you're building a team, like get on Slack sooner rather than later, and you have to systematize that. Similarly, I don't do anything unless it's scheduled. Paul, I do not let the day just happen to me. Granted, there are always things that are going to come up, but even when things come up, I intentionally leave open spots in my schedule so that I can say, okay, this needs to get done, but I can't do it right now, but I am going to schedule it for 90 minutes from now, unless it truly is something that's just incredibly urgent. I almost never take phone calls in live. Someone calls me live, I almost always let it go to voicemail. Everything is scheduled. So I'll let it go to voicemail and I will schedule that call back. And so similarly, my team knows that as the CEO, I don't do anything unless it's in my schedule. And it's really, really easy to schedule time with me. I make sure that they all have access to my calendar. I use a scheduling app, and I just, and I also block off time for my kids. I block off time for my wife. I don't get too pent up. Like I said, I leave open space, and I might say, look, I'm intentionally going to leave this hour blank, and if nothing else comes up, that I'm going to play a game on my iPad, and I'm going to schedule. And this is one thing I've learned about high achievers is they schedule their goof off time, or they leave an open spot in their calendar so that they can go for a walk, go for a run, go hang out with their kids, go just goof around, have just complete blow off time. You gotta be able to do that. But again, Paul, I think it has everything to do with intentionality.
Great. And you mentioned Slack and a scheduling tool, but what are some other apps that you love using in your business or software?
So I'm also a really big fan of Evernote. I try to keep notes of everything. So one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to have to remember anything. I just, if it's a bit of information and I think that I am going to need that information at some point in the future, even if I'm not sure, and I don't have it easily available in my Gmail or whatever, then I will just keep a running note, almost like I'm journaling stuff that I want to remember anytime I'm listening to a podcast. And I keep a little black book with me. And when I'm listening to podcasts and I hear a recommendation, I jot it down. And when and then, at some point, at least a few times a week, I will go through and I will transfer those notes to Evernote. And even if Evernote is a big mishmash, I try to put some context in there so I can search. And again, Evernote's not the only app. I'm sure that there's probably even better apps than that. It just happens to be the one that I've been using forever. And so I'm in love with it. Oh, one other thing. I want to share this, is I am a huge fan. I think the future of sales right now, as we're recording this, the next couple of years, one trend that I think is going to be so big for sales is going to be using video. And if you are not using video in sales right now, you better get with it. Because we started using, and there's many different platforms out there. We use one called BombBomb, which allows you to send very, very easy, allows you to send videos to your prospects. Thank you videos are probably the most effective video that you can send. Just watch what happens to your sales cycle when you start implementing video.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. And what about some podcasts or some books that you recommend?
Oh my gosh. I live, on podcasts. And so, right now this is how I learn, is I get into phases where I just obsess about certain topics. So right now, I'm a person of faith, and so I've really been trying to look for really great messages, especially around Christmas time. I think that's where I just try to just kind of focus on some things that will help me draw closer to divinity. I'm a big fan, obviously, of marketing. Bomb has a podcast called The Bombcast. I think it's pretty good. Again, I think it's another major trend that I think is going to be very, very helpful. I'm a fan of duct tape marketing. I really love, shows like Hidden Brain and other things that that just help us understand human behavior a lot better. And then, of course, anytime I can fill my life with inspiration, shows like yours, Paul. I mean, just where your profiling success stories are just so important. That you get that on a regular basis. We are the combined average of the 5 people we hang around with most, and you can improve your associations at any time by plugging into really great podcasts. So I do most of my learning audio. Like, I listen to a lot of audio books. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't read a whole lot of books. I will when I have no other choice, but I generally am a rabid consumer of audio content. And so I think it's important that we know ourselves, we know how we learn, and that we really don't feel pressure. Like, if you don't read textbooks, that's okay. You don't have to. But if you really love learning, then go ahead and get a subscription to Blinkist, for example, which is a great way to digest books very quickly, or Audible or audiobooks, whatever. But man, feed that monster and keep those associations with successful people coming.
Great. Well, look, you've given so much valuable advice on this podcast, but what's some parting advice you'd like to leave?
Yeah, and that is, the thing that one thing I've learned is that the thing that scares you the most, or the thing that's most difficult for you, or the thing that gives you the most anxiety, pay very close attention to that and ask yourself big questions and important questions, and allow yourself to journal about, why does this give me anxiety? Why am I afraid? What am I afraid of? Why do I feel boxed in? What is the worst thing that could happen if I truly failed with this thing? And really explore that. And then say, what would happen if I increased my circle of comfort by just an inch, by a little bit, like that one thing that bothers me. But I know that if I were to become a master at that one thing, that it could absolutely change my life in a major way. Maybe you want more patience with your kids. Maybe you want more, you want to be able to communicate from the stage a little bit better. So really lean into the thing that you wish you had, but right now it makes you uncomfortable. And you don't have to, drive yourself insane with, really jumping into the fire, so to speak. But I want you to move an inch every day. Read stories about people who have conquered that problem. If you suffer from anxiety, look, I feel you. Anxiety sucks, but you can really improve in that area. And there's so much good information out there. Depression sucks. Mental health issues. It's so horrible to deal with those things. I know those things firsthand. I've got dear family members that suffer with those things. But I'm telling you, I promise you that there are ways to cope. There are ways to grow from that. And here's the amazing thing, Paul. When you start getting on the other side of those small victories, you now have an insight that you can help somebody else with. I just believe that the thing that we have the greatest challenge with is usually an invitation to make the world a better place by overcoming it in small ways on a regular basis. And eventually, it's like, I used to be a very heavy guy, and I eventually lost all the weight. I ran a couple of marathons, and now I have an insight that has really allowed me to serve so many people by truly understanding a journey, but yet still having empathy to not being able to even run around the block. And so, again, really embrace the things that, either God or the universe has given you, that it really sucks right now. And trust me, we all have those things. And I don't mean to make light of any challenge that you have in life, but how can you learn in small ways to master it? And when you do that, just watch what happens. It's truly beautiful.
Yeah, well, it's been so great having you on the show, Josh. You're, I normally fill out a bit of paper, a blank bit of paper on all the learnings, and it's absolutely full. So I'm going to have to stop the interview now because I've just run out of paper.
No more learnings. No more learning. Too much.
But, look, it was brilliant. And also, Josh has been very kind to help you. So if you're listening now, if you go to upmyinfluence.com/discovery and just mention BLG in there, and Josh will give you a free 15-minute authority. It's normally worth a couple of $100 US.
That's right.
But Josh has, kindly given it to all of the corporate escapees. Josh being a corporate escapee himself, he just knows how hard the journey is. And like he said, he failed 6 times before his 7th took off. So, if you're there and you need some help, you need some exposure, you need to get more influencer engagement, please take Josh up on that. But Josh, absolutely brilliant having you on the podcast. Loved it, and thanks for coming.
Paul, thank you so much for having me.
That was such an energy-packed interview with Josh. He had some brilliant insights, but 3 in particular that stood out for me. One was how to build influencer engagement affordably. So I think he gives you some valuable content there. And second is why he failed in 6 businesses and the secret behind his success in 7 and 8. Absolutely gold. And then the third thing is pay attention to what is most difficult for you and slowly go towards that. And Josh gives some really specific feedback. So I'd love to hear what you thought of this interview and any questions you've got. So email me at paul@buildlivegive.com. Also, if you know someone else that could benefit from this show, please forward it to them. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate Escapees podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. If you would like to join a community of like-minded peers, please visit www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening and be brave.